busy, and he had done 3 studio films, and I remember him wanting to take time off to rest and be with his kids for first half of the year, and then he wanted to go on the music tour, which always just made him really happy. And so that was the summer of 2018, and then we had the slot for the fall of 2018, and that's where we spent a lot of time thinking about what that movie was going to be. And Waiting for the Barbarians was kind of a little gift because it was based on a J.M. Coetzee novel, and Johnny's, very well read and knew the literature, the underlying book, and Mark Rylance was in the film, and it was just like a dream actor that he always wanted to work with.
What was Mr. Depp paid for Waiting for the Barbarians?
$1 million.
And I apologize if you've already said this. Was Waiting for the Barbarians an independent film or a studio film?
It was an independent.
Mr. Wiggum, you also mentioned the film Minamata. When was that film shot?
That was the very beginning of 2019. So I think January start.
Was Minamata an indie film or a studio film?
It was independent.
How much was Mr. Depp ultimately paid for Minamata?
So his fee became, it was $3 million.
What, if any, role did Mr. Depp play in Pirates of the Caribbean 5?
He played Captain Jack Sparrow.
Was he paid an actor's fee for that film?
Technically, it was before my tenure, but yes, I would assume he was.
Mr. Wiggum, would you please explain for the jury what are residual or back-end rights?
I think the easiest way to explain a back-end is it's an ownership stake on behalf of the artist in the success of the movie, and typically is only granted to stars of a certain stature.
And in addition to the fee, Mr. Depp, the upfront fee that Mr. Depp was paid for Fantastic Beasts 5, which I know preceded you, what if any understanding do you have of whether Mr. Depp had any back-end rights for Pirates 5?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation. He said that deal was at the other agency, and he wasn't.
I'll allow it if he knows it. That's fine. Go ahead.
Her Honor says you may answer the question.
Yeah, so you initially said Fantastic Beasts. I think you meant Pirates 5.
I apologize. I did mean for Pirates 5, what, if any, back end did Mr. Depp have for Pirates 5?
I don't know what it was. I know that he had one.
To what extent, if any, did Mr. Depp ever have a deal to perform in Pirates 6?
So when we started representing him, I remember Brian Lord and myself finishing a deal that had started at the previous agency.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Okay. Hold on a minute.
For the interruption, Mr. Wiggum, Her Honor says you may answer the question, which I believe is, to what extent, if any, did Mr. Depp ever have a deal to perform in Pirates 6?
So we finished the deal, and then we closed the deal at $22.5 million for that film, is my memory.
Which studio was involved in the Pirate series, including Pirate 6?
So that was Disney.
Was Disney the studio involved in all of the Pirates movies?
Yes.
What role was Mr. Depp to play in Pirate 6?
Objection calls for speculation
I'll allow
and
it.
hearsay.
I'll allow it.
Captain Jack Sparrow.
Was the $22.5 million to be paid to Mr. Depp by Disney or by some other entity?
Disney.
And when was that $22.5 million to be paid to Mr. Depp?
It would be paid when he shoots it. We call it principal photography, so when the film shoots.
Who was the producer of the Pirates franchise?
Jerry Bruckheimer.
Does Mr. Bruckheimer work for Disney?
No.
In 2017, to what extent, if any, was Mr. Bruckheimer supportive of Mr. Depp remaining in the Pirates franchise?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Putting aside his role in the Pirates films, did Mr. Depp have any other affiliations with Disney in 2017?
Yes.
What were those affiliations?
He, if I remember, in the spring, he went down to Disneyland and put on the Captain Jack Sparrow outfit and wardrobe and went into the ride. He and Disney had worked out a fun little thing where he was going to take the place of the automated, Captain Jack Sparrow on the Pirates ride, and so he would kind of surprise people as they were going along there. And so I remember he did that, and then in May of 2017, he went to Disney Shanghai to help open the Pirates of the Caribbean ride there.
What, if anything, did those affiliations signify about the status of Mr. Depp's relationship with Disney as of that time?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. To what extent, if any, did Mr. Depp socialize with anyone at Disney in 2017, to the extent you know?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it to the extent he knows.
Do you know whether Mr. Depp socialized with Disney during 2017, yes or no?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation and hearsay.
I do.
If you could lay a foundation to how he knows.
How do you know that Mr. Depp socialized with Disney in calendar year 2017?
Because I was there.
Who, would you please describe for the jury what you mean when you said you were there when Mr. Depp socialized with Disney?
We had a dinner in spring of 2017 with myself, Jerry Bruckheimer, Johnny, and Sean Bailey, who was running the film, was president of Disney.
How did the dinner conclude?
Great. I mean, very, very nice. It was a great dinner.
As of early December 2018, so we're now in December of 2018, what, if anything, was your understanding of the status of whether Mr. Depp would actually appear in Pirate 6?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Mr. Wiggum, did there come a time when you saw an op-ed that purportedly written by Amber Heard that appeared in the Washington Post?
Yes.
Mr. Wiggum, I would like to show you, please, what was entered previously into evidence as Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Mr. Gibson, would you please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 1? And, Your Honor, may we please publish this to the jury as it's been previously... Oh, it is. Thank you. Mr. Wiggum, have you ever seen this document before?
Yes.
What is it?
I believe it's the opinionated op-ed in the Washington Post that Ms. Heard wrote.
Mr. Wiggum, when did you first see Ms. Heard's op-ed in the Washington Post?
It would have been right contemporaneous to when it came out.
And Tom, if you would please move ahead to, I believe, the second page in Plaintiff's Exhibit 1, and drawing your attention specifically to the third paragraph of the op-ed, Ms. Heard writes, quote, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out, unquote. What, if any, understanding do you have of that reference?
That it was regarding Johnny and their relationship.
Directing your attention, Tom, if we could just move back up to the first page of Exhibit 1, directing your attention to the title of the article, quote, Amber Heard, colon, I spoke up against sexual violence, unquote. What, if any, understanding do you have of that reference?
Objection, Your Honor. It's irrelevant what his understanding is.
I'll allow it.
That was rather shocking, I remember, because it was the first time I'd heard an allegation of sexual abuse.
And against whom was the allegation of sexual abuse?
Objection, Your Honor. How would he know?
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Mr. Wiggum, directing your attention to the fifth paragraph of Plaintiff's Exhibit 1, Ms. Heard writes, quote, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse, unquote. To what does that refer?
Objection, Your Honor. How would he know what it was?
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Mr. Gibson, if you would please take down Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Mr. Wiggum, how, if at all, was Ms. Heard's op-ed different from other articles about the couple's relationship?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay foundation.
All right.
Other articles?
Mr. Wiggum, had you seen other articles in the course of your duties as Mr. Depp's agent about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp?
Objection, Your Honor. Still
Yes.
calls for hearsay foundation.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. How, if at all, was the op-ed different from other articles you had read about the Johnny Depp-Amber Heard relationship?
It was a first-person account coming from the victim. It's extremely impactful.
Impactful in a good or bad way?
With respect to Johnny, it was catastrophic because it was coming from a first-person account. It was not from a journalist. It was not from someone observing. It was from someone saying, this happened to me.
Mr. Wiggum, between December 18, 2018, the date of the op-ed, and October 2020, did Mr. Depp perform in any studio films?
Sorry, could you just repeat the dates?
Between December 18th, 2018, which is the date that Ms. Heard's op-ed appeared, and October 2020, to what extent, if any, did Mr. Depp perform in any studio films?
Zero. No studio films.
How, if at all, did Ms. Heard's op-ed impact Mr. Depp's ability to land roles in studio films between December 2018 and October 2020?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay foundation and expert.
I'll sustain that objection. Next. Are you near the end, Mr. Chu? I just want to make sure because it's
I
coming
am,
up on
yeah.
morning break. Okay.
I
Go.
have probably 5 minutes.
Okay, that's good. Go ahead.
What effect, if any, did the op-ed have on the release of Minamata, the indie film you mentioned
Objection,
earlier?
Your Honor. Calls for hearsay speculation.
He worked on
You
the
want to approach for a
Sure.
moment?
Yes, Your Honor. What happened, Mr. Wiggum, after the op-ed, but before October 2020, with respect to Minamata?
So the op-ed came out in December, and it was right as we were going on Christmas break, and Minamata was supposed to start in January, and I remember it was very, very difficult to keep Minamata together. The financing became shaky. The budget had to come down. Johnny's fee came down in order to save the movie.
Tom, if you would please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 584, and we're not asking to publish it because it does not come in. This is an email chain with the subject line, quote, Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow won't
I
return.
object to him reading
All right.
even from that to the jury.
That's fine, Your Honor. We
Okay,
can.
move on.
Mr. Wiggum, do you recognize this email chain?
Yes, now that I'm looking at it.
What is the date of this email chain?
I think it's December 20th.
December 20th of what year, sir?
Sorry, December 20th of 2018.
Mr. Wiggum, directing your attention to the middle email message on Plaintiff's Exhibit 584, did you receive this message from Christian Carino in or about December 20th, 2018 at 3:26 p.m.?
Your Honor, I'm going to object because it's a hearsay document. He's asking questions from the hearsay document.
I'll
It's
allow
double.
that. I'll allow that question. We'll see where we go.
Her Honor said you may answer that question.
Yes, I see. I see what he's asking me.
Would you please explain to the jury what the message was about?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. Hearsay. He's asking him to essentially say what.
One approach for a moment.
Tom, if you could please take that down. Mr. Wiggum, did there come a time after Ms. Heard's publication of the op-ed on December 18, 2018, but before October 2020, that you learned more about Disney's plans about whether it would cast Mr. Depp in Pirate 6?
Objection, hearsay.
All right.
I'm just asking whether he...
Okay, I'll allow that.
Yes,
When did that happen?
in 2019.
What happened? Go ahead.
Your Honor.
Next question.
What happened in 2019 with respect to Disney, your learning about Disney's plans, whether to use Mr. Depp in Pirate 6?
Objection, hearsay.
What happened? So
Yes.
I'll allow what happened. Go ahead.
It became clear they were going in a different direction.
When did you learn that Disney was going in a different direction and no longer planned to use Mr. Depp in Pirate 6?
Early 2019.
Who is Margot Robbie?
She's a fantastic actress. She's a client with CAA.
What, if anything, did you learn about the role Margot Robbie would be playing in Pirate 6?
I think that calls for hearsay. Again, Your Honor, I'm going to object.
I'll overrule the objection.
I learned that they were developing a Pirates project for her to star in.
After you learned that Disney was going in a different direction in early 2019 and no longer planned to use Mr. Depp, to what extent did you reach out to Jerry Bruckheimer or Sean Bailey?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
It does not, Your Honor.
Overruled. I'll allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
A lot.
Did you reach out to Mr. Bruckheimer and Mr. Bailey jointly or separately?
Separately.
What, if anything, was the result of your outreach to Mr. Bruckheimer and Mr. Bailey?
Objection still calls for hearsay, Your Honor.
Calls for hearsay.
I'm just asking what the result was.
It's still based on his communications with them.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
After your outreach to Mr. Bailey or strike that, was your outreach to Mr. Bruckheimer and Mr. Bailey successful?
Objection, leading.
I'll allow it.
No. I successfully made contact with them, but I was not successful in rescuing pirates for Johnny.
When was the last time you discussed Mr. Depp's role in Pirate 6 with Jerry Bruckheimer, Sean Bailey, or anyone else at Disney?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, on hearsay.
Overruled.
2019, I believe.
In addition to Pirate 6, did Mr. Depp lose other films between December 2018 and October 2020 because of Ms. Heard's op-ed?
Objection.
I'll sustain the objection.
In addition to Pirate 6, did Mr. Depp lose any other films between December 2018 and October 20?
Objection, Your Honor. First of all, I don't think he testified that he lost Pirate 6. Second of all,
she's now contradicting the witness's testimony, which is inappropriate.
Both of you, overruled. Let's go. Next. Go ahead and answer the question.
Yes. After the op-ed, it was impossible to get him a studio film, which is what we normally would have been focused on in that time period.
Mr. Wiggum, to what extent did COVID, or strike that, to what extent, if any, did COVID impact Mr. Depp's opportunities prior to October 2020?
I think it had an effect on Johnny, like other actors to some degree. But we were still doing business, especially on behalf of, bigger stars that greenlit films. And so what was happening was we would close deals or, put together a movie and then just set the start date for whenever people could get together and actually shoot the movie.
Mr. Wiggum, in your many interactions with Mr. Depp, have you ever seen him angry?
Objection, Your Honor. It's leading.
I'll sustain as to leading.
In your many interactions, thank you, Your Honor. In your many interactions with Mr. Depp, to what extent, if any, have you ever seen him lose his temper?
I never have, actually.
To what extent, if any, has Mr. Depp ever raised his voice in your presence?
No, he never has.
Mr. Wiggum, to what extent have you ever seen Mr. Depp engage in any violence?
Never.
Mr. Wiggum, other than Ms. Heard, are you aware of any other woman who has ever accused Mr. Depp of physical abuse?
Objection, leading, foundation, and hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection to leading.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Wiggum.
All right.
I'll pass the witness.
All right, Mr. Wiggum, we'll do cross-examination in about 15 minutes. I'm going to take a 15-minute morning recess, okay, sir? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take our morning recess. Do not discuss the case with anybody and don't do any outside research, okay? Mr. Wiggum, what I'll do is put you in the lobby, and then you won't see anything. In about 15 minutes, I'll bring you back, okay?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this point, we'll just come back at noon, okay?
All right,
All right, thank you. Ready for the jury? Okay. All right, Mr. Wigman, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. As soon as you ask him his first question, he should pop up there.
He'll come up then?
Yeah,
Okay.
cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Wiggum, you testified that you closed a deal for Mr. Depp for Pirate 6 with him acting as Jack Sparrow. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
Mr. Wiggum, could you do me a favor and just count from 1 to 5 for me so I can get you on my big screens here?
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Not getting on this. There he is.
There we go.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I'm sorry.
But in fact, Mr. Wiggum, it's not true that Mr. Depp ever had a contract with Disney for Pirate 6. Isn't that correct?
Can you explain that question or that position?
Have you ever seen a contract that provides for Mr. Depp to play Pirate 6?
To the best of my knowledge, my memory, myself and my partner closed an optional picture deal for the amount of money of what that picture would be for Johnny.
And you would make sure to have that in writing, wouldn't you?
You know, that would normally go through legal counsel in terms of the codification of it.
Do you have any explanation for why there exists nothing, no piece of paper, nothing suggesting that Mr. Depp ever had a deal with Disney for Pirate 6?
Objection, lack of foundation, compound.
Oh, I'll allow it.
So I often close, when I was an agent, we would work on many deals where I actually wouldn't see contracts. They were verbal in nature. And then, you know, especially on optional pictures, just so there was an understanding of what the money would be.
So do you have an explanation why there is not even a piece of paper, not an email, not a text, not a document, nothing that suggests that Mr. Depp is going to be in Pirate 6 as Jack Sparrow?
Objection, asked and answered.
I don't believe it was.
So overruled. I'll allow it.
If you're asking me my opinion, it wouldn't necessarily be alarming because that would be a conversation usually to understand. Disney's going to want to know: are we on the same? Page about what the money's going to be? And most of that conversation, if I remember correctly, was also with one of Johnny's lawyers at the time.
Okay, and so you had, so Johnny's lawyer was discussing this, but there's no document. Do you have an explanation for that?
You may know better than me if there is a document, but that was Jake Bloom, at the time, I believe, if memory serves me correct.
All right. But would it be fair to say that you have never seen a document that provides that Mr. Depp was going to be in Pirate 6?
It would be fair to say that it was consistent with a lot of the conversations that I would have on behalf of big stars, where it was verbal and there was an understanding of what the deal was going to be.
Mr. Wiggum, if you could please answer my question.
Objection, harassment. He did answer the question.
I'll allow you. Want to ask your question? Go ahead.
Thank you.
Sure.
Judy,
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Judy, can you read that back? Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, so would it be fair to say that you have never seen a document that provides that Mr. Depp was going to be in Pirate 6?
It would be fair to say that I have not seen a document on pirates. Now, just so you know,
Mr. Wiggum, I don't need you to give me extra. I just want you to answer mine. I just want to know, have you ever seen a document that says Mr. Depp is going to be in Pirates 6?
I only to fully answer the question though. I think there's some context.
That's an easy yes or no. Have you seen a document?
Technically, I perhaps have, because it connects to all the other Pirates films. It's just a modification of a new document. So I have not seen 22.5 million written on a page. You're correct about that.
Okay. Now, you, in fact, had discussions back in 2016 and 2017 with Mr. Bailey, Sean Bailey. You talked about him a little bit ago, right?
Yep.
And you also had discussions with Jerry Bruckheimer in 2016 and 2017, correct?
Yes.
About Mr. Depp potentially being in Pirate 6, correct? And then you had discussions in 2018 with Mr. Bailey, and he was quite non-committal about whether Mr. Depp would be in Pirate 6, correct?
Objection, hearsay.
That's fine.
All right.
Okay. Given that he was able to...
I'll sustain as to hearsay. It is hearsay.
Okay.
All right.
So you determined, Mr. Wiggum, that by the fall of 2018, it was very likely that Mr. Depp was not going to be in Pirate 6. Is that correct?
It's a two-pronged answer from my perspective, because there was really two individuals involved in that decision. I would say Jerry Bruckheimer and Sean Bailey. Jerry Bruckheimer in the fall of 2018 really wanted Johnny in that next film, and Sean was non-committal, as you said.
And Mr. Bruckheimer made it clear to you that Mr. Bailey was the one who gets to decide because he's Disney, right?
Ultimately, and he also wanted to be the tip of the spear to really try to convince Sean.
Okay. Now, do you recall...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you recall having your deposition taken on January 20, 2021? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, with you.
Okay, can you pull that up, Michelle, please? Thank you. I'm going to ask you to turn to page 44. And Mr. Wiggum, you were under oath at the time of this deposition, correct? Correct?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Line 10. This is page 44, line 10. The question, do you recall approximately when in 2018 you inferred from your discussion with Mr. Bailey that the likelihood of Mr. Depp being in Pirate 6 was not high or was going away? And your answer at that time was, if memory serves me, the latter part of 2018 maybe. Question, when you say latter, is that any time from August to December, or what are you thinking? Answer, I would say fall, maybe, October, November, December, in that area. Do you recall giving that testimony under oath at that time?
I do, now that I see it, yes.
Okay. And in fact, there were quite a few things going on earlier in 2018 that might have had a bit of an impact on Mr. Depp's reputation. Would you agree?
It might help if you
refresh your recollection. Sure. But and before I go there, though, I think you said that the reason it was so catastrophic for Mr. Depp for the op-ed was because it was a first-person account of Johnny, right? Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
Okay. Wasn't it a first-person account when Ms. Heard filed for the TRO in 2016?
So that would have predated any relationship I had to Johnny, so I had no knowledge of that.
Okay, so you don't know whether it was catastrophic then?
If you're asking me my opinion on something I don't know, I can form an opinion right now. It's a court document and probably a little different than an op-ed in the Washington Post. But I would agree it's not now that I'm forming an opinion, that it's not a great headline. Sure.
When you read the op-ed, did you read it online or did you read it in the actual Post paper?
I don't remember.
Well, let's pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 2. Does this refresh your recollection?
Very hard for me to see. Is that just the paper?
We're going to try to scroll in a little bit more.
Again, just you can help me out. Is that the paper? Is
Yes.
that the article?
Yes, that's the Washington Post.
So, what's the question? Sorry.
Does this help refresh your recollection of whether you saw it in print or whether you saw it online?
It does not, but I'll tell you that I did not typically pick up the Washington Post,
Okay, and so while we're sitting, if you can, just for a second, you're saying that then 2 years ago I became, oops, I better not do that. Let's clear that one. Then 2 years ago I became a public figure representing domestic abuse. That's this first person from Ms. Heard that's catastrophic for Mr. Depp. Is that your testimony?
My testimony is that it reads like a victim statement from someone involved and the recipient, and it became a bit of a death nail, catastrophic thing for Mr. Depp in the Hollywood community.
All right, well, let's pull up Defendant's Exhibit 99. Now, there was, in fact, an article published in the Sun newspaper by Dan Wooten, the editor-in-chief, on April 27, 2018. Do you recall that?
Now that I'm looking at it.
Does that refreshes your recollection? And in fact,
Yes.
This article calls Mr. Depp a wife beater, does it not?
Objection, hearsay.
I'll allow it for them.
You know what? I can't see the print even with these glasses, but
All right. Well,
I'll take your word for it.
Well, the title here is How Can J.K. Rowling Be Genuinely Happy Casting Wife-Beater Johnny Depp in the new Fantastic Beasts film?
Objection, hearsay,
Do you see that?
Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
Yeah.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of this exhibit. I think at this point it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted, but it's going to offer. He's testified to comparisons of other articles. He's testifying to the impact of the op-ed. I think it's in fairness we should be able to put this in and be able to make the comparisons.
It's clearly hearsay, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the
It's
objection.
not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted, Your
I'll
Honor.
sustain the objection.
Okay. Well, let's go to the third page. Now let's go to the fourth page. So it has A5, I think is what I'm trying to get to. So it says paragraph 7. So do you recall that it says in here,
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Your Honor,
She's just trying to backdoor your ruling.
Mr. Wiggum, the article also had pictures, did it not?
I don't recall.
Do you recall whether it had a picture of Ms. Heard?
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
I don't recall.
Can we go to the 8th page? I'm showing you the picture right now. Does that refresh your recollection?
Your Honor, hearsay, lack of foundation.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
It doesn't speak to my impression of when I read it or how I read it, but I see the photo. Yes, ma'am.
All right, and in fact, it shows bruises on it, doesn't it? On Ms. Heard's face?
Objection, lack of foundation.
Overruled.
That would be what I think, yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Depp filed a lawsuit against the Sun newspaper and against Dan Wooten for this article, correct?
I believe so.
June 13, 2018. Let's pull up 1599, defendants 1599. Does this refresh your recollection?
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
Just for refreshing recollection, I'll allow.
Just so I understand the question, you're asking, does it refresh a memory that Johnny filed suit against the Sun?
Yes, and Dan Wooten. On June 13, 2018.
Sure.
Okay.
Now that I'm looking at it. Yeah.
All right, and he did so in the UK, in the High Court of Justice, correct?
I believe so. You would know better than I.
Okay, and if we can just turn to page 9, and do you recall that Mr. Depp alleged that that article had caused him serious harm to his personal and professional reputation?
Objection, hearsay, calls for speculation.
I'll allow the question.
Thank you.
No, I don't recall.
I'm going to ask you to take a look at paragraph 11. And let me see if I
I
can
need
get
new glasses.
Okay.
Sorry. I can barely.
I'm gonna-
Your Honor, is there a way to even make that screen bigger on mine? I wish I had better glasses and more technologically savvy.
They can make it a little bigger, but I think that's about as far as it can go.
I'm going to try to highlight it here so that might help you a little bit. Let me switch the color. So, do you recall that Mr. Depp alleged that the article in the Sun newspaper by Dan Wooten had caused serious harm to the claimant's personal and professional reputation?
If you're asking me, I don't recall it. I was not involved in that case at all. I'm able to read what's in front of me.
But you don't recall it, and you don't recall if that had any impact on Disney in 2018.
Objection asked and answered.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
All right. Do you recall that Mr. Depp also alleged that he was caused significant distress and embarrassment by the publication of that article?
No, that I don't recall that.
Okay.
I say that because I just was not involved in that case.
All right.
My memory of that was it was a tabloid, so and the lawyers were in.
All right. Michelle, you can take that down. Thank you. Now, there was a trial in the UK, was there not, on Mr. Depp's claims of libel against Dan Wooten and the Sun?
I believe so.
And it was in July of 2020, was it not?
I don't remember the date, actually.
All right. And it lasted 3 weeks? Do you recall that?
I don't, but I'll take your word for it.
Do you recall there being an enormous amount of publicity surrounding that trial?
Objection calls for speculation, lack of foundation.
He said he did. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Wiggum, you said you did recall that?
Asked and answered.
I'll allow it.
I remember there being press around it, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And in fact, do you recall that Mr. Depp gave testimony for 4 days?
Not specifically. I don't.
Do you recall that Ms. Heard gave testimony for 4 days?
I don't recall any specific memory of who testified, for how long, or any details within the case.
Do you recall there being many, many witnesses testifying on that case?
I think I'd revert to my answer just now.
Okay. And the press that surrounded that case, do you recall it being focusing on things like Mr. Depp's drug and alcohol use?
Same answer.
Do you recall there being the kitchen video being shown repeatedly?
Objection. Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure. I think my last question was, do you recall there being a lot of publicity surrounding Mr. Depp's alcohol and drug use?
I think I answered that.
Oh, that's right. I was on the video, the kitchen video. Do you recall there being the kitchen video being played pretty repeatedly in the press?
No, I don't.
Do you recall a lot of pictures of Ms. Heard reflecting bruises, cuts, injuries?
I think, just to be clear, I don't recall anything that was going on within the case. I was always consumed with next film and TV opportunities, and that was being handled by the lawyers. That's my memory.
Do you recall, I just have a couple more to ask you on this, do you recall there being allegations of at least 14 incidents of domestic violence against Ms. Heard in that trial?
I do not, with specificity. Same answer.
Now, could we bring up exhibit number 1 again, plaintiffs? Now, Mr. Wiggum, do you know who wrote Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath, this has to change?
You're talking about the title?
Yes.
I wouldn't say that to me, I would have assumed it was misheard.
You assume, but you don't know, do you?
I do not.
Okay. And were you aware that there were also 3 pleaded incidents of sexual violence in the UK trial against Ms. Heard by Mr. Depp?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, your testimony is, you can take that down now, thank you. Your testimony is that since some point in 2020, Mr. Depp has not had any more movie opportunities, is that correct?
Sorry, repeat the date.
When is the last time Mr. Depp had a movie opportunity?
The last film that he shot was Minamata, to the best of my memory.
All right. And in fact, do you know whether the article that was in the UK, the ensuing lawsuit that was brought by Mr. Depp, and the ensuing trial and all the publicity, do you know whether that had any impact on Mr. Depp's career?
Objection compound.
All right, I'll sustain the objection.
Do you know whether the collection of all of those items I just listed had an impact on Mr. Depp's career?
Remind me of the dates that you're asking about.
So the answer, I take it, is no, you don't know, correct?
I'm just trying to make sure I give you a correct answer so I understand the question. You referenced after 2020.
Okay,
Is that what you're saying?
the article was April of 2018. The lawsuit was June of 2018. The trial was July of 2020. What opportunities has Mr. Depp had since July 2020?
Since July 2020, he has not done a film.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, redirect.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Wiggum. Do you recall Ms. Bredehoft asked you questions about whether you ever actually saw a document containing the $22.5 million deal for Mr. Depp for Pirate 6? Do you recall that?
I do.
And do you recall when you were trying to answer her question, you said you needed a little more context? Do you recall that?
Yes.
And would you please now provide the jury that context so they can have a fuller understanding of what your testimony is?
So often on a franchise movie, when you're dealing with big stars and you're talking about future optional pictures, you engage at the high level, meaning the president or the top of the studio, to get an understanding of what that deal is going to be. They then get papered, typically, when I say papered, amended, because it's based on the same contract, usually, that's been in existence. And it would get, sometimes we don't see paperwork or get paperwork until the film is happening.
And Mr. Wiggum, on a similar line, Ms. Bredehoft asked you some questions about whether after this deal was done, it was starting to trend badly with respect to Disney and not so, and still well with respect to Mr. Bruckheimer in the fall of 2018. Do you remember that testimony?
I do.
When was it that Disney made the final decision as to whether Mr. Depp would be in Pirate 6?
Objection, cause for
I'll sustain the objection. I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Mr. Wiggum, it may have been trending badly as of that time, but Disney had not gone in the other direction, correct?
No.
So the
Overruled,
email you
I'll
showed me
allow it.
earlier,
You may
the
continue.
email you showed me earlier was 2 days after the op-ed, and I was saying that Disney had never said that Johnny would not be in the film as of that date.
Overruled.
And my testimony is the exact same as the deposition, which is it was trending badly in the late fall on behalf of Disney, but Jerry Bruckheimer and I were lobbying to make it happen, and so we had hope, and it became clear to me in early 2019 that it was over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wiggum. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Is this witness subject to recall?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Wiggum, since you're subject to recall, you're still subject to the rule on witnesses, so you cannot discuss your testimony with anybody and you cannot watch any of the trial. Okay, sir?
Okay.
All right, but you're free for today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, your next witness.
Your Honor, before we call the next witness, may we approach briefly for a
Okay,
moment?
sure.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case in penalty of law?
Yes.
Good. How are you doing, sir? Good afternoon. You can sit down, sir. That's fine.
Good afternoon, Mr. Marks.
Good afternoon.
Would you please state your full name for the record?
Richard Edward Marks.
And Mr. Marks, where do you live?
I live in Hollywood.
Would you tell us a little bit about your educational background, sir?
I'm a product of the public school system in Los Angeles, and I went to UCLA undergraduate, and I'm a graduate of the UCLA School of Law.
When did you graduate from UCLA School of Law?
I graduated in 1973, and I've been an officer of the courts since then, almost 50 years.
Where do you work?
I work at my own law firm, Richard Marks and Associates.
What is Richard Marks and Associates?
It is a transactional entertainment law firm, and we represent individuals, writers, directors, actors, books, but authors. But mainly we represent producers who are developing a product, if you will, to be produced and then exploited on television, features, streaming, things like that.
When you say a transactional law firm, what do you mean by that?
What I do is make deals. They're transactions. I'm a deal guy. So my whole practice, all these decades, has been about getting to yes. How do you make a deal? And then how do you get it documented so people sign it? and then are able, it's clear enough that it can be administered and people can know what to do after you've made the deal.
Specifically, what types of clients do you work with?
Well, as I said, I work with all kinds of clients, but my bigger clients and the bulk of my practice is representing producers who they develop and they produce content for exploitation.
Are there any particular clients that you can identify?
Yeah, I've been working for a long time with ITV, which is a huge British company with worldwide reach in entertainment. They produce The Voice, Love Island, and right now I've done all the development legal work on a miniseries that's about to shoot in France and England, starring Michael Douglas as Benjamin Franklin. It's based on a novel that we optioned. I helped them option years ago. Then scripts were written for the 8 hours. Then Michael Douglas was engaged. The director was engaged. And I do all those contracts. And that's ITV. Another one of my big clients is Village Roadshow. They're an Australian company. They partner with Warner Brothers and they produce movies like Matrix, Aquaman, Scooby-Doo. Right now, I am working on a television series for them, doing the legal production, and before that it was development, but the production legal work on a reboot of the old College Bowl show, where two colleges come together with teams and answer questions, and here they're going to win scholarships. And the hosts are Peyton Manning and Eli Manning. So that's currently what I'm working on for Village Roadshow.
Any other clients?
And I would say my third big client is a company called Media Rights, MRC. And they produce movies and TV shows. Recently, I've done a lot of work for them. They are finishing up a miniseries that I'm doing the legal work on for Apple, starring Billy Crudup. We just finished a miniseries for them called Terminal List with Chris Pratt. That's for Amazon. And we recently finished a miniseries doing the legal deal making for MRC on a show called The Shrink Next Door, which is aired. It starred Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd. And then I can't leave out my longest client, which is the producers of Bosch for Amazon. It's got to be 9-10 years ago when we went into Amazon. They had never produced a series, and we negotiated a deal for Michael Conley's book series, and we cast Titus Welliver as Bosch. They wouldn't order a series, they would only order a pilot. And now, in the next few days, what I call the 8th season, but which is the first season of the spinoff, will be available on IMDb TV instead of on Amazon, but Amazon owns IMDb TV. And we're right now writing the 9th season. So I've had this long run with this one particular series.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about the types of deals that you work on for these clients?
Well, when you think of a series or a motion picture, and you see the credits, there's hundreds of credits there. And every one of those people, you have to make a deal with them, and you have to paper it so that they sign it. And you know what to pay them, and what is there a guild involved, a union? What are their services? And what I do is all of that, soup to nuts, many times. Sometimes I work with in-house counsel or other attorneys, and we split up the work. But basically, you want to produce a movie or a show. You might option a book. I do that deal. You might hire a writer. Then you might get a director, then a line producer, a UPM, first AD. Then you start hiring your cast. Then you start making location deals. Then you start renting equipment and props and getting releases for photos you might show or for people who might end up on camera. And then when you're done shooting, you're making deals for merchandising and deals with distributors. And in the old days, might have been for a DVD or for merchandising, a doll. And so it's really, what I do is make deals. And all deals, I've been doing it for almost 50 years, but they're all the same. They have elements of time, money, credit, rights, and perks. And I have approached deals that way so that I've made myself relevant. When I started out, there were 3 networks and big studios. And the attorney said, well, I'm a TV lawyer or I'm a feature lawyer. I just said, I'm a transactional lawyer. And so I've been able to adapt and make deals with Netflix, Quibi, YouTube, you name it. I've made deals. I mean, I recently made a deal with Hellman's Mayonnaise for an actress who is going to be an influencer for them on the web. And it was it was a good payday for this actress, but that's the way I look at deals. I'm a deal maker, and that's my practice.
Mr. Marks, you testified that you have been working in the entertainment industry almost 50 years. How did you get started in the entertainment industry?
I got started in the entertainment industry by being born in Hollywood, and it's our town industry, if you will. And I've always been interested in it. And when I went to UCLA, I took all the film classes there were. And when I went to UCLA Law School, it was by design because, number one, I couldn't afford the big law school, so UCLA was a public school. It was virtually free. I went to UCLA Law School because if you want to practice entertainment law in Hollywood, you go to UCLA or USC. Those are the schools where you kind of create your contacts and your network. And at UCLA, they had some of the best professors who taught entertainment law related subjects. So I took copyright, trademark, entertainment contracts, if you will. I took everything entertainment related. And that's how I kind of built the foundation for then my after law school career.
What did you do after you graduated from law school?
Well, I wanted to do entertainment transaction law, but I realized I could earn a little bit more money if I went into entertainment litigation, suing over copyrights and trademarks. And so I took the highest paying job that I could get out of law school, and was in 1973. And I did IP litigation, disputes over copyrights, trademarks, disputes over rights, things like that. And I was a low-level litigator, doing depositions or motions, certainly not sitting at the, examining witnesses, except it might be in a deposition. And I did that for it was my first year out of law school.
What did you do after that?
Well, after that, I kind of made a decision that being a litigator wasn't for me, that I wanted to make deals, that I wanted my career to be about getting to yes. And that involved a lot of, conflict sometimes, but the goal was to get to yes so that both parties could work together. Because the goal was working together and creating the TV show, not making the deal. The deal makers had to step away so that you closed a deal and then people could live with that deal. So I went to a transactional law firm, and I was there a couple years, and I made deals.
What kind of projects did you work on when you transitioned into that deal-making role?
Well, this is, mid-1970s, and this law firm was hot, if you will. Some of my classmates were there. That's how I got the job. I had to take a cut in pay to go there. I'll never forget, I'm the second chair attorney in a big conference room at Fox, and we're trying to close a deal for our young client, George Lucas, to make a film called Star Wars, a Western space movie. And Fox would not give us the budget or the salary he wanted. And this is the God's honest truth. We said, okay, give us the merchandising. And famously, they gave us the merchandising because they didn't think there was value there. And that's how much our business has changed. While I was at my first transactional firm, we also worked for a client. His name is Sylvester Stallone. His claim to fame is that he was a character actor, but he had written a script that all the major stars wanted to play. They wanted to play the role Rocky. And he said, I will not sell this script unless I play Rocky. And no one was happy about that. And the deal we made was he got to play the role, but it was a very low budget, and he hardly had a dressing room. He hardly had any perks. He wasn't happy about it, but we were able to make up for that in the deals for Rocky 2, 3. And that's the type of deals. It was, at that entertainment transactional firm, we weren't representing major companies, if you will. We were representing artists, writers, directors, talent, like individuals. We weren't representing the companies I do now, like ITV or Village Roadshow.
How long were you at that law firm?
I was at that firm for a couple of years.
What did you do after that?
After that, I made a decision that I wanted to go in-house where the full-time business was making product, and it was very tied to production, and I wanted to move away from law firms at that moment. And my first in-house job was for the Ziegler Discount Agency, which was one of the premier literary agencies in town. We represented writers and books and estates of books. And at that time, in late 70s, early 80s, if you wanted to hire a writer or a book, or option a book, there were three places you went. You went to Swifty, which he's kind of famous, Swifty Lazar's Oscar parties, or you went to Swanee, H.L. Swanson, or you went to Ziggy, and I worked for Ziggy.
Did you work for any other companies in an in-house capacity as a deal maker?
Oh yeah. With Ziggy, we made deals for the book The Princess Bride. We did a lot of. We worked for William Goldman, that was his book and his screenplay, and it was a fabulous experience. But that firm was bought by ICM, a much bigger agency, and then I moved to Paramount. That's where I next went, and at Paramount, I was the attorney on the series Cheers and the series Family Ties, which was the break for the young son, Michael J. Fox. And then I did something, because I have never said I'm just a TV lawyer. I'm a deal maker. I get to yes. And it's sort of unheard of, but I moved from network television doing the deals for Cheers and Family Ties. I moved to features at Paramount because you could earn a little more money in features. And I was married, and I had a child. And in features, I was assigned to do the development and production work for a producer, who's in this case Jerry Bruckheimer, and I also served. They had an overall deal with Eddie Murphy, so I did the legal work on his films like Beverly Hills Cop, Coming to America, things like that. And I was at Paramount about 4 years.
Where'd you go after Paramount?
After Paramount, I got this opportunity to head up business and legal affairs in the feature division for Jerry Weintraub's studio. Jerry was famous at the time for Karate Kid and Ocean's 11, and he represented, Elvis and Frank Sinatra in music, and John Denver. But this was his motion picture company, and I was in features, and we made a film called Troop Beverly Hills, which was starring Shelley Long. We made another film, The Big Blue. We acquired a film library. He was positioning himself to be a major company until he went bankrupt. And that was one of his only failures.
Where'd you go after that?
After Jerry Weintraub, I went to Disney, and I filled in for a year for the head of legal in features, who was on maternity leave and taking a family leave. And so I headed up legal on films like Dick Tracy, Madonna was in that, Rocketeer, another live action film. But what I really remember about my time at Disney is they were revamping the animation department, and they wanted to make a different kind of Disney animated film. And part of it, in the old days, Disney animated films, the voices weren't advertised. They weren't the stars of the movie. Disney was the star, or Dumbo was the star, but the voices were hardly known. And we broke that mold, and it was the first deal where we paid real money to someone to do a voice. Was a deal I made with Robin Williams to voice Aladdin. And it changed the whole history of Disney and feature animation. I worked on Beauty and the Beast, and it was a tremendous experience to be involved with them.
After you worked at Disney, did you continue to fill in-house deal-making roles?
Yeah, I continued my in-house road, even in the world that I could see was consolidating, and it was going to be more and more difficult to stay in-house. After Disney, I went to a company called Media Home Entertainment, and they put up money for films, and for their investment, they got the VHS cassette rights. So Media Home Entertainment was one of the producers, investors in the Nightmare on Elm Street series and Blue Velvet. And what they got was the right to sell video cassettes. They also manufactured and sold the Jane Fonda videos or the NFL videos. And it was a great business, except the studios realized, are we crazy? Why are we letting another company sell video? We should keep that in-house. And so I was not only head of legal, but I was on the board of directors, and we sold the company to Fox so that they could take in the assets and eliminate a competitor.
Where'd you go after that?
After Media Home Entertainment, I went to a company called Kushner Lock. It was it was at a time in the business there were hundreds of independent producing companies because the networks couldn't produce for themselves. There were laws preventing it. And Kushner Lock, we produced Pinocchio with Jonathan Taylor Thomas. We produced a small movie called Freeway. It was Reese Witherspoon's one of her first roles, and it was. I was there for 8 years. It was a good long run until they, as all those independent companies ultimately did, not all, most, they went bankrupt after 8 years.
What did you do after that?
Now, you can see I'm still chasing the in-house world. I went to a company, Nelvana. They were a Canadian animation company, but they had this big office in LA. I headed up business and legal. We manufactured, made, produced animated television series like Care Bears and merchandising also. Babar, Big Bear, Little Bear, all sorts of animated subjects. And merchandising deals and cartoons, if you will. And then that Canadian company closed the LA office and moved back to Canada. I didn't want to move back to Canada. And so my last in-house situation, I went to Universal Network Television, and I did business and legal affairs on Just Shoot Me, television series, a series starring Josh Brolin called Mr. Sterling. It was kind of patterned on Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And at the same time I was at Universal Network Television, I consulted with Nickelodeon Features, and I helped them sort of build out their feature products. They were on the Paramount lot. I had been at Paramount for a long time, and we worked on films such as SpongeBob, the animated film. And then when that consulting ended and NBC came in and bought Universal, that ended my job at Universal, and I made the decision I would go back and be a lawyer at a law firm.
What types of work were you doing when you went back to the law firms?
When I went back to the law firm, I did a lot of, I worked on their clients, and I helped a financier, Robert Sillerman, in effect buy the American Idol brand. I worked with Barry Gordy's company, trying to turn some of his world into theatrical plays. I worked with the Nat King Cole estate, trying to do things. So it was a lot of reality. I remember I worked with J. Walter Thompson, and they were, in effect, creating advertising opportunity, branding. And then the one that sticks in my mind is I helped, George Foreman market things so that he made a deal to be the face of a thing called the George Foreman Grill, and it was a good practice.
Mr. Marks, you testified that you now are at a law firm called Richard Marks and Associates. When did you start that firm?
Well, after the firm I just told you about was called Greenberg Traurig. It's a large international firm. I moved to a firm called The Point Media in 2006, and I was there for 14 years, doing much the same work that I do now. And then in 2020, right at the start of the pandemic, I went out on my own and formed Richard Marks and Associates.
Over the course of your career, what, if any, changes have you observed in the deal-making space in the entertainment industry?
Well, before I got involved in the business, most deals for writers were how much money per week and how many weeks. When I got into the business, it was already more complicated. But through my decades, all that's happened has gotten more and more complicated. Still the essential elements of time, money, credit, perks, money, whatever. But it's gotten more complicated. You had to deal with merchandising. You had to deal with sequels. You had to deal with all sorts of derivative works, video games, you name it, publicity, promotion. It all expanded so that making a deal that might have been, simple 30 years before now was a major production. And lawyers became integral. You couldn't do a deal without someone who was going to dive into the boilerplate and make sure that it was right.
Your Honor, I'm about to switch gears a little bit. I don't know if you would like to break now for lunch.
It's fine. If you could approach us for a moment, just a moment.
Your Honor, before we take lunch, plaintiff would move in Mr. Marks as an expert in the entertainment industry.
All right, any objection? All right, so moved. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take our hour lunch then. Please do not talk to anybody and don't do any outside research. We'll see you back in an hour, okay? Thank you. Mr. Marks, if you could just stay there for a second, sir. Thank you. Stay there for a second. Just sit there.
Thank you.
No problem, sir. All right. Sir, since you're in the middle of your testimony, you cannot talk to anybody about your testimony at this time, including any lawyers or Mr. Depp. Okay, sir? All right. All right, we'll be back. Then we'll be back at, let's make it 2 o'clock, okay? All right, thank you.